So, welcome back to Capital Code, where we decode the intersection of capital and exploring new money, new markets, and machine intelligence, how they're shaping the era and the next era of business. Today's guest brings a grounded, faith-based, centered voice, and with a lot of conviction, Luke Abegglen. Yeah,
Got it. Sounds perfect.
Co-founder. He's co-founder over at EZHOA, HOA, a platform built to simplify community management and give people back their time. We're going to dive into what happens when innovation meets authenticity and how faith and technology can actually work together to make life better, not busier. So first and foremost, Luke, welcome to Capital Code. Appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brent. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, the big thing, we always start with, like, what's the story behind EZHOA? I mean, I think what I always like to ask is, when did you first see a need to make HOA management just function better or easier? Can you walk us through that, kind of the origin of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Even before EZHOA was a SaaS program that I was invited to be a part of in the self-storage industry. That one was called Easy Storage Solutions. And a couple of guys here in St. George, Utah, had this great idea to, automate it. They discovered they were doing like summer sales and always looking for a place to store their stuff when they would go out for the 3 months to sell. Mm-hmm. And they would call and get voicemail after voicemail trying to find a storage. And they're like, man, there's got to be a way to do this. And back then, this was like 2007, 2008. They're like, there's got to be an app for that, right? Like that was the saying. There's got to be an app. So they
building it.
Yeah, exactly. So they embarked on that. They hired a local company to do some development and build an app to make it so that someone could rent online. And that's where the technology kind of opened up. Actually, in the storage industry at the time, there wasn't much of that. Again, it was just people had the mentality of being a call and I'll book your unit and you get a lock and you pay with check. Yeah. And so
maybe, or they don't answer.
Maybe, right. Yeah, or you don't find one. There was no way to see what was available. You had to talk to someone to see what was available. And they kind of went into this journey of like, all the companies that were in there have been like, oh, we've been trying to get people on board with this for a while, and they're not receptive. This is old school. Like that was the term, right? The storage industry was old school. And you had a bunch of, baby boomers running that industry that were like, no, we don't accept cards. We don't do that. Yeah. We don't want your computer. And they kind of met some resistance, but they weathered through it until it changed. And this is where it was really awesome and fortunate for me, is I got to come in right as that shift was taking place and as this technology was being accepted. And I in my early calls, I faced that resistance of trying to get people to understand how this was going to make their lives easier. Yeah. Instead of complicated and compromise their information and change who they were. And to the point before I left the industry where people laugh at anyone trying to take a check or do it the old school way, because it was so much easier. It was so much simpler. It makes everyone's life easier to just have that technology. So that was an awesome experience. But going back to what you mentioned, I think the realization that I had and the partners there as well were that we would go to trade show conferences all over different states, and we would always meet this group of people that are like, what's new in the storage industry? Tell us what's new. Tell us what we can take a part of. And then it was like changing it into Bluetooth access where you would get it on your phone and you could just walk up to your storage door and it would know it was you and unlock and open and stuff, right? So they were like, hey, we want you to do this. And we're like, no, we're easy storage solutions. We're not, not complicated. And we're like, what happens if somebody doesn't want to have the app? What happens if they forget their phone? How long is the battery span? And we kind of had these questions. But again, there was that group that just jumped all on board with it. And
Mm-hmm.
then they ran into those problems, and then they're like, oh, and then they've kind of like had a reverse order back out of it a little bit.
Yeah.
So every new thing that came along, of course, it would grab our attention, but we would try to keep it simple, keep it back to the basics of what people wanted, just to make their life easier.
Yeah.
But sometimes you get lost in making it easy by adding too many things, and then you run
Well,
into those technology.
I think about that like from your perspective, like whether it's engineering and architecture or design or building, all that. If you had to summarize your mission in one sentence, not that I feel like I could summarize it, but what would that be? Is like a business principle. What is that philosophy? Is it as simple as simplify, or what is the mission in one sentence?
Yeah, I would say simplify. And the thing that comes to mind as you say that is, and I always love this story of Vince Lombardi when he got his team out on the field and he said,
Mhm.
"Gentlemen, this is a football." And he went through all the basics of how long the field was, how wide it was, like the basics. And here they are, professional players. And
Pros.
they're like, why are pros going through these fundamentals? But they had gotten lost in the fundamentals by
Ooh.
this thought of like, hey, we're professional and we can, what's the trick plays? What are the, and so I think that was kind of our focus and our mission too, at least in my mind, was that concept from Vince Lombardi that, hey,
Mhm.
let's just stick with the fundamentals. You can't over progress yourself and get away from the fundamentals.
Yeah, it's like what was the UCLA Woodard, where he's like teaching Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like, hey, here's how
Yeah.
you tie your shoes, and you want to wear your socks this way, right? Why? So you don't get blisters. And I've been doing this for 50 years, so I'm
Yeah.
getting you to the very elemental simplification of doing the important things well, or doing the important things, simplifying the important things, or yeah, I see that in your resume. I think like you've said this before. You said before automation should really free people, not replace them, right? Like it's about freeing them up from what, like the time or the confusion, or what are you trying to simplify when you're building stuff? What are you trying to free them from?
Yeah, and I think again what I've ran into is a paradigm shift, like helping people. There's a certain way of the people want to look at things and that they're used to. They're like, oh well, this is what I know, and you want to help them like understand that there are other patterns, but if you disrupt that cycle for someone too much, that's where you meet resistance and that's where you meet difficulty. And so
Okay.
I think
The
and
unfamiliar, like if it becomes too unfamiliar, even though it's advanced, you're creating resistance. Like you said, you're creating the obstacle, right?
right. And that's what we did very well is we had an amazing team there that would just kind of hold the hand of those people as they were making that first rough transition, because they would start out with something totally new and they would be like, this is not easy, it needs to be called hard.
Yeah.
Hard solution, because
Yeah.
it was hard for them until they got used to it. Then once they got used to it, then they're like, oh, now
Oh,
especially with EZHOA, there's treasurers that spend hours if not days doing billing, and it's like, why would you not have a system that's invoicing and sending reminders, and that it just makes sense? Do you not want a whole day back in your life
yeah.
from doing this volunteer thing? But that's something that doesn't require human interaction,
Mm-hmm.
where on the contrary, we don't want to replace that. There is an element of people appreciate meeting together, meeting face to face, discussing ideas, being open to one another. So it's like you can't replace that, but you can replace um, the mundane, right? The person the poor treasurer who is doing the invoices by hand or licking hundreds of envelopes to
Yeah.
send out. Like, automate those things, but don't let it replace that human interaction. And I think that's probably what I have the toughest time with AI is I think it's a great tool, but I don't like how it's so in your face, and in
Yeah,
so many ways right now. So
well, we talked about this, like, where, I mean, your thoughts are that AI is maybe too much of the buzzword at the front end versus just showing people the real world outcome that gives them the simplicity and the time freedom that they're desiring. Like, why do you have to market it so hard on the front end as it being AI when it's just like, hey, there's a system that can help you do said task in a more efficient manner that'll save you time, energy, and money. Like, talking more about the outcomes. And one of the things that we've discussed is like, and has been a major theme here, is like, because AI can presumably do everything, unless we describe it doing something, it kind of does nothing and causes a little bit of that resistance and frustration in people's cognitive dissonance, almost like it's too confusing. And so I don't know if I have a question in here as much as more of a statement, like, so maybe it's like this, like, what does the human first approach look like in automation in your world, in particular at EZHOA? Like, what does that approach look and feel like? Like, how do you guys manage that expectation of, I guess, your customers?
yeah, that's an excellent question, and I agree with you completely. I think the first step would be, again, that of replacement, like being in sales for so long. If a person feels like they're being sold, then someone's trying too hard to sell something. And if it needs to be in your face, well, it must not be all that great. If it has to be almost forced to you,
Yeah.
I'm always like, oh, well, what's behind this? Like, why are you trying so hard? If this is really going to make my life easier, it should be something that I'm seeking out. It should be
Yeah.
something that I'm going to, and that's very much our approach with our customers too. Is people have sought out easy. They're like, oh, I want, as a volunteer board member, I want my time back. What am I going to search for? What is easy
The easy button.
HOA management, and here we are with that name, and we stand behind that of making it easier. But to your question of how we separate that or focus on human is, and why in both Easy Storage Solutions and Easy HOA has been a high focus on customer support. When somebody
Okay.
feels stuck and they're wanting help, they want to talk to a person. They want to
Yep.
talk to somebody with empathy. They want to talk to somebody that can validate their concern. And I've heard some things with AI voices and recordings, and you're like, oh, this sounds like a person. Like, they have the emotion in there.
Yeah.
But to be able to understand and validate, we've seen that get much better over the years. But there's something to a pause. There's something to a tone of a voice. There's little tiny elements in there that people so much appreciate. And as soon as they recognize, the instant they recognize they're not talking to a real person, they're kind of done with it. And so that's our commitment to our customers, is we implement AI, but there's always going to be a human voice on the other side of that phone when they're in a
Yeah.
stuck place.
I almost think about like like, for me, I can't stand, so the opposition of AI with a human voice would be like this prompting me through, press 1 for whatever, press 4 for this, I've pressed like 72 buttons and I'm still not in the right space, in the right
Yeah.
place. And then I'm just like, I just start hammering the 0 button until I
Right.
can actually
Get
talk
the
to a person.
person. Yeah.
Hey, do
Yeah.
you not have all my information in front of you? Like, this is ridiculous. Certainly you guys have my information. I mean, I pay you every month. You guys are delivering or not delivering a product or service. In particular, when it comes to services, I think in particular about like cable, right? I won't mention any names,
Yeah.
but start to think like, do they not have access? Or they'll say something when you do get to a human, like, well, I don't have access to that on my system. I'm like, well, how do you not have access to that on your system? I'm calling the system. And so I feel like that's where the integration has to be, is like, as a human, I just want to make sure that, okay, you on your side of the provider have access to all my information so that you can solve my problem for me. And that's where I think the human AI interaction could come in, is where the human says, yeah, no, I see all of that. I see it all. How can I help you? And then rather than using AI to help me, use the human to use the AI to help me.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, And
Right.
and I know there's a cost there. I get that, but there's no greater cost than me being so frustrated that I hang up the phone and call Metronet and I'm like, I'm out of here, Comcast. Like, I'm done with you guys, right? You just
Yeah.
lost $150 a month that I've been paying for the last 5 years. And so what did that cost? What was the opportunity cost lost there from a lack of information, essentially? It kind of just circles back to this. So how do you guys help make your, essentially, like, isn't the homeowner your end user, or is it simply the HOA management, or both?
Um, yeah, we primarily work with board members,
Okay.
so the homeowners that are in place of the individual residents. We don't work with them necessarily, but we are providing an app for them. So again, to simplify things so that they can take pictures and send it to the board. And what we've seen is it allows boards to feel like they're more in control and using it as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they run into, especially with smaller associations, they'll have a property manager because we're in such busy lifestyles now. Nobody has the time to volunteer to like take on all these tasks, and so they hire it out, and then a property management company, um, and what I always say is they don't live there. Their concern isn't as big. They're going to treat it like a rental. They're treating your whole neighborhood as a
Unit.
rental instead of their own.
Mm.
And I hear it all the time of people running into frustrations with them missing paying a bill, or even to the point of embezzling money, and no one knows what's going on because it's out of sight and out of mind. They
Yeah.
have these bad experiences and they say, we want control of this, but nobody here has time. So it's like, okay, here's a tool
Mm.
that makes you not have to be so involved with the inner workings that it's taking your time, but you are the one that's in control of it. And again, we built our app so the board members can make any changes. They have full control over settings. They never call us and be like, "Oh, I can't do this. Will your team do it for us?" No, this is your tool that we're providing for you to use.
Oh, that's
And we're
brilliant.
here to show you how to swing the hammer or pull the saw, if you don't know how to do it.
So giving them the platform to move the toggles into their customized solution so that they can not have to be in wasting the time, but be in control of the data so they can at least see it and have access to it. That's another thing. It's like just having access to the
Mhm.
information is vital. I think a lot of groups are really it that's really almost like, I almost feel like it's a moral crisis. Like, again, like my experience that I shared with the Comcast, it's like,
Mhm.
you have access to all my information. Why can't I get the answers? I mean, who else would I call other than you? You guys have it. And so as a homeowner, I would think, well, if I have a challenge and then my HOA using Easy HOA can get me the information back quickly, efficiently, and smoothly, that makes me have more confidence in my board team and the neighborhood in general. I would argue you probably could have higher property values because those issues are always a problem. It's like it's one of the first questions I ask when I'm looking for a new house and that's an HOA. Oh, how is the HOA? Who's on it?
Yeah.
Like, what is it
Yeah,
like?
yeah.
Who runs it? Because it's always ends up being a challenge because, again, you're running a volunteer army with nobody that has any time to do anything.
Right. And
You
that's
guys sounds
what
like that's what you solve.
Yeah, exactly. We put the control back in the board members and make it accessible to the homeowners as well. That transparency builds a lot of trust. And I think you bring up an interesting point there as well, that I think that not having access to stuff is the way a company tries to control. Like, well, we don't trust, our employees having access to this because we're not sure what they're going to do. And they
Right?
restrict it to the point where it restricts the homeowner. So that's one thing we've focused on as well with our staff. We pick staff that we trust, and we pick systems that are open. And again, trying to like share that with an HOA board that's like, hey, well, we don't want everyone to have access to it. It's like, oh, well, why don't you trust that
Why not?
person?
You're in the
Yeah, why not?
HOA.
What don't you want them to see? And we
Well,
have these
we're paying
conversations.
Willie's cousin to do the lawn service, and it should be
Yeah.
50 grand, but he's charging 125. It's
Yeah.
usually that's what it is, right?
Exactly. So again, I'm a part of this paradigm shift of like understanding of like, hey, for these tools to be effective, there first needs to be this moral compass and this structuring it
Ooh.
in a trustful way.
So are you more of a strong advocate of transparency? I mean, data transparency is a core principle. Like
Yeah,
everybody should be able to see the information clearly, almost like blockchain. Now, I'm not saying you guys are built on blockchain, but because you have access and the doors are open, you can see what's going on in there, and it builds trust. It should build trust, correct?
right. Yeah,
Okay.
again, if there's nothing to hide, it should be shared. And if I'm moving into an HOA and I can go to the website and I can pull up the documents and I know what's going on, I'm like, oh,
There
there's
it
no
is.
funny business in this board. I don't have to worry about overpaying. I don't have to worry about these things because it's
Oh,
transparent. There's
so that's the
clarity.
big thing is like, hey, I'm paying for a service, and so I minimally expect access to the information if I'm paying for a service, which is called an HOA. So if Easy HOA succeeded perfectly for a client, what kind of daily life improvements, I guess, would the board actually feel? Like what is their actual experience if everything's functioning perfect for them?
Yeah, I think the two biggest reliefs, again, are usually around the treasurer role.
Okay.
Usually they're spending, like I said, often just hours and days, volunteering, and no one knows what. Again, if there's no transparency, no one knows what that treasurer is doing and what time goes into it. And there's usually they often feel like it's very thankless. They're spending all this volunteer time, and no one understands or is giving any accolades or even just caring that they're
Yeah.
spending their volunteer time. So that is pretty big one that we see. And then yeah, just giving people back their time with the making a very simple used, again, just very basic understanding accounting module.
Mhm.
Treasurers appreciate that, so they're not on there. Often what we see is somebody who is a CPA or has some bookkeeping experience that's the treasurer, and when they've put in those thankless hours and are ready to move on, they're like, oh, well, Brent, you've done an amazing job, but there's no one that can replace you. So,
Ah,
and
you
we don't
guys
have enough
volunteer
money in
again?
our budget. Yeah, we don't have money in the budget to hire a firm. So, can
Oh,
you just
wow.
keep doing it? And I talk to people that are getting begged to do it for a decade or more and 2 decades. They've been doing it for 20 years because no one can fill their shoes. So we've designed it to be a very rudimentary accounting system that
Mhm.
still provides what they need, but so much easier to use. And then to have, we have great staff that are accountants that can help your average board member figure out how to use these simple tools so that you expand your pool of who can do those roles.
Wow. So now they're just managing a system versus having to be a quote unquote expert at being an accountant. Yeah, and that CPA person is probably like, not only am I volunteers, but this is how I make my living. I'd rather go make money doing
Yeah.
this type of work instead of getting yelled at because, we didn't account for something or I didn't get the report out in time or, you're wondering why this is here. It's like, well, you weren't at the last HOA, meeting to find out why we did that. And it's like, it's just, I've realized that the only time that the board gets any comments, especially at my own HOA here, is uh, when there's a problem. So you're not only giving them their time back, but it seems like you're avoiding the potential problems because they have access to the clear data. It's like, well, it's all right here.
Mhm.
You can see it clear right on the, hey, there's an app for that.
Yeah. Go on the app. The
There's
information's
an app.
there.
So I like to do this segment. It's kind of like I ask you a question, just shoot me an answer, and there doesn't have to be any sort of right or wrong answer. It's a lightning round. Are you down for it?
Yeah. Let's
Okay.
do it.
Quick answers. First thing that comes to your mind. Biggest myth about AI today.
That it's gonna take over humanity.
I love that answer. I've asked that about 10 times and almost ironically get the same answer every time. Or, it's something to be afraid of because if you're afraid, then you don't take the appropriate actions to make sure that you shouldn't be afraid, which is to educate yourself, right? How about this
Mhm.
greatest lesson that business has taught you?
Oh wow, greatest lesson. Um, I think humanity. Caring. I think there's an element to just being genuine with
Mm,
people. Just caring about
mm,
it and also being up front about it, not being fake, being authentic.
Authenticity.
Yes,
Yeah, it
authenticity.
reminds me of not to diverge, but Brene Brown and
Yeah.
her largest sociological study, and finding that one of the people are doing the best they can, and some people's best is just horrible, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
everybody's the best characteristic they can have is authenticity, because it creates the bond of trust. And maybe that's where AI, like you said, the inauthentic tone or response or empathy in the voice, we are wired to immediately not trust that because it's not authentic. That's kind of what
Exactly.
I've noticed. Okay.
Yeah, I would feel the same. I would prefer to have a rude person on the other phone and know that they're a human than to have some sugar-coated spicy response
Yeah.
from an AI.
It just sounds so programmed, and they,
Yeah.
like you said, they are getting some that can be a little, have a little attitude maybe, and so maybe that'll be helpful because yeah, attitude is good.
Yeah.
What's one piece of advice, if you could, that you would give your 20-year-old self?
Oh wow. Yeah, that's a great question too. I think 20 years old, yeah, I was definitely wanting to just I was more from that old school mentality. I think in that era too, I that actually brings back to when I really first understood that working out in the power, electrical space,
Mm-hmm.
being in the field and talking with engineers and people that were in using computer systems saying, "Okay, by theory, this is what should work, or this is this new tool," and like, no, that's not going to work because the guy in the trench knows. And I learned at 20 years old, it was like I got a part of that group or that culture of like, oh, you don't listen to them, they don't know anything. But I
Ooh.
was fortunate enough to get in a place where I eventually went on that other side of the fence, and could make be a voice for the people in the trench, but
Mm.
then also see, oh, there's things that they don't understand
Yeah.
where you're at too. And I think that mutual understanding, being willing to understand others before you're understood, that would probably be my best advice.
Wow. I mean, I don't, you probably didn't mean to, but it gave me chills because today's Veterans Day as well. By the way, we're recording this on November 11th, 2025. And just, it's all we kind of hire here at Orimo is if someone's a veteran, they get top of the resume pile. We're not shy to say it, but we obviously it's a meritocracy as well. They got to have the merits, but they almost always do. And that's one of the things we hear from them is they're like, when we bring them on board, like, does this culture support the idea that the boots on the ground actually have value in their thoughts, feelings, opinions, updates, feedback? And to your point, absolutely, because we don't know what we don't know. And you talked about two sides of the fence. Gosh, it feels like now there's almost like 20 fences, but everybody's voice has to be heard in order to make the most educated decision. And let's be honest, the boots on the ground have been not given as much weight as they should, and they do know what they're talking about when it comes to, hey, there's troop movements over in that wood line. No, we don't want to go over there. Like, you can't order me over there. There's a problem over there, and that's been lost, I think, a little bit. So I really appreciate that. All right, well, back to this one thing you'll never automate in EZHOA that you could think of.
Yeah, again, just that human voice on the other side of the phone.
Bingo. Faith, family, finance, which keeps you the most centered?
Faith is first for me.
Yep.
Yeah, like
that.
the simple analogy of you gotta, when you're on an airplane, right? Secure your oxygen mask first, and then your loved ones next to you. You can't help unless you have your own oxygen, and faith is what I believe is all of our oxygen, and we have to take care of that first and
Yeah,
foremost.
I could tell it drives for me too. It just drives a lot of the decisions. We didn't talk much about it. Maybe I will now. It's just kind of come into my mind is, do you ever feel like you're in this space and there's a higher purpose to why you're in this space? I mean, obviously you're making HOA boards happier, but do you feel like you're a part of something a little bit bigger?
Yeah, certainly. That's interesting that you asked that question. It's that's probably my biggest inner battle for me right now is feeling like I'm making a difference here. I'm helping people, and there's
Mm,
nothing more, rewarding than just to hear somebody say, "Thank you, thank you
wow.
for creating this. Thank you for helping me." And it's definitely a really good feeling. But I often feel like there is a bigger purpose out there, and
Mm,
there's more for me to do somewhere, and that's what I keep looking for, is like what is that? If this is the path, you know, as the saying goes, God works in mysterious ways.
mm,
Sometimes we're on the right path and we're looking for it elsewhere because we just don't see how
mm,
that aligns with our future. That's very much been my experience with Easy Storage and Easy HOA. Both is I wanted to get out of that manual work that like sucked me in my 20s of like, hey, I want to do something physical. I want something with variety. I want something
mhm,
with a little with variety and danger. And so that's what led me in there. And then I have a family and I'm like, oh, risking my life every day, is maybe not so appealing. And seeing guys that had just wore their bodies out is suddenly like, oh, what does my future look like? Kind of pulled me away, and I was like really searching
mm,
deep of like what I remember vividly thinking like, what is my purpose? There's something bigger out there for me.
mhm.
And just simply being invited to a lunch. In fact, I'll tell this story if that's okay, real
Yep.
quick.
Yeah. So
My yeah, my brother, I was out at the time, I was doing outside sales, going around looking for companies to sell automation of all things, automation, electronics to assembly lines and lighting and different things, electrical components. And I was just like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing right now? I just would always have this like this pit in my stomach of like every day, like trying to motivate and find myself here. And my brother sent me this thing from Bob Proctor,
love
and
Bob Proctor.
he said, "Stop trying so hard to be a good employee. Spend your time being the best you, and that will byproduct make you a good employee, and focus on what builds you."
Ugh,
And it just like hit me, and I had like chills of just like, man, this is the answer. And I said, what do I need right now? Because I had this pull of like, oh, I need to get another account, I need to knock another door, I need to make another phone call. And I'm like, I happened to be by my friend's dental office, and I was like, hey, let's go grab lunch. I just need to chat with a friend,
mm,
and not worry about getting business for a minute, and setting up a lunch with the client or something.
yeah.
Thankfully, he agreed. He's like, well, I'm going to lunch with my brother. You're welcome to join us. So I go with him. I meet his brother, and his brother is the founder of Easy Storage. He's like, we're looking for a salesperson. He liked the interaction that we had. He invited me to come back. He's like, hey, would you be interested in this? And I saw an opportunity for working in sales with him, selling my product to him. And so I kept kind of coming back, and he was like, yeah, I like what you're doing. I like what you're about. I like your tenacity. And him and
Yeah.
his partner hired me, and it changed my world. And it made me think, oh, there it is. There was the answer that I was impatiently searching for a few years. And when I found it, it just felt like home. It just felt amazing. The culture, the people, the opportunity,
Wow.
it just opened up the expansion of talking to new people every day and from all over, versus the small area that I was in. And it just felt like, the windows of heaven poured upon me. So
Yeah, like instead of building a better business or a better product or being a better employee, like Bob Proctor's statement is just be a better person, and then all those things come to you. It's like it's almost like you seek first this idea of this kingdom within you, and then everything else just comes to you. And I know that that sounds a little bit woo woo for some people, uh, But if you haven't listened to Bob Proctor,
Yeah.
if this isn't a pitch for Bob Proctor, Bob
Yeah.
Proctor had this mantra. This is interesting you say that about brothers too. My brother, I had some relative success in my late 30s, early 40s, and was very thankful for the businesses I had built. And my brother had always kind of chosen a corporate pathway. And I remember he came one time and we were at my house and we were going to, I was blessed beyond measure. We had this lake house I was going to that I owned. And he's like, you know what? I just got to ask you. And this is my older brother. So it felt very honored. It was very honoring. He says, if you had to put it on one or two things, like, what would you attribute this success to? And I was, because my brother was the older brother, he was definitely never humble like that. And it took me for a shock. And I wanted to give him something profound. I wanted to give him some woo-woo-y formula, but I said, you know what? It's this mantra or this thing from Bob Proctor. And so I played it for him on YouTube. It said, I'm so happy and grateful now that money comes to me in increasing quantities through multiple sources on a continuous basis. And it just loops that. I'm so happy and grateful now that money comes to me in increasing quantities through multiple sources on a continuous basis. I said, Brian, my brother, I said, I wish I had something more profound, but it's this. And so he listened to it and we had a great week, and he went home and he says, I thought about that all week. I practiced that and it was very difficult to memorize it. Then I finally memorized it. He said, Brian, lo and behold, a week later, I got this opportunity. And he's like, I totally believe they were directly connected. I said, say it isn't so. You know what I mean? It's it's not a truth for me. It's a truth for it's almost just being your best self produces the results that everybody's trying to look for. And not to tie it back to AI, but I believe this is the world is missing this opportunity to really just kind of believe in themselves and to make themselves better. I feel like AI has the opportunity to liberate people's time. And so you are doing that mission. You are doing that call. You're breaking people off of, even if it's 4 hours a week at an HOA thing or an hour a week where they're like, gosh, if I could just get that time back, I could maybe be a better person. And then obviously it's scalable into other opportunities. But I digress a little bit, telling my own story there. I'll probably edit all that out, Luke. But it just hits me square where it's the listeners to this, I feel like are trying to dance between, and I'm probably going to edit this out, by the way, maybe not, but I'll let my producer make the choice. But it's they're real struggling with so capital is nothing but focus and energy, and where your energy flows is where your growth goes, right? And so they're struggling with where to allocate money because, yeah, you could be kind of feeding the beast instead of feeding the liberty and feeding freedom and feeding more time and more revelation and more time to spend with your family. I really see that a lot in some of the investors. They're in a conundrum and they don't like it because they've never been in a conundrum, because they've kind of had the old financial system figured out pretty well. Mm-hmm. And like we talked about in the pre-pot, nobody knows right now. But if you could stand on some core principles, right? Humanity first, human interaction elevated, get rid of the time-consuming, repetitive tasks that AI is really, really good at, you're probably on a really good pathway to success as far as implementing the service. And you've proved that with two different easy companies, right? Is there another easy coming, or are you pretty locked in on EZHOA?
Yeah, good question there too. Is it seems like that would be next in the pattern, but I think we learned from the first go around that it grew and grew and grew, and then once it was sold, and now it's part of the largest in the industry.
Gotcha.
But it changed, and people knew it. They saw it coming as soon as they sold. They're like, "Oh, there it goes."
Culture shift.
Yep, we're not gonna be able to get a hold of you. Price is gonna go up, and that's what Easy Storage was built on. Were those two things of getting a hold of someone and keeping the prices at a budgetable for the end user, the person who is wanting to own a storage facility and manage it and have this residual income. Going back to, I love that you brought that up. Again, my firm belief is that our purpose here on earth is relationships. the relationship first and foremost with our family. That's what we were created for. And the relationships that we have with our friends and our acquaintances and the people we meet, that is first and foremost. And I don't believe that that should ever be replaced, or we should even consider on how we do that. And that's, if we get into, go down another segue with social media, but that is what that humanity has to be there. That is our purpose. So if we can create and use this tool, the artificial, the AI, those tools to help you save time. And again, the greatest thing ever, actually I have a call with a friend today who he got into the self-storage industry because he wanted to be there for his daughter who had some health issues. And this was his answer from God, is to say, here's this business that can essentially run on its own. And he had such a grateful heart for what was created that allowed him to have this residual income so that he could focus his time on his family. And it's a friendship that's lasted forever because it's built on that. And that's what I am passionate about, is helping people use those tools so that they can focus on what's most important, and that is relationships.
Yeah, Luke, and this has been incredible, Luke. I think you remind us that, you're reminding me that it's like progress without purpose is really not even progress at all. Kind of going back to because AI can presumably do everything, unless it does something with purpose, it really isn't progress. It's detraction. And being more purposeful, I think the listeners are going to learn a lot. If you want to learn more about Luke and EZHOA, if you're listening to this, Luke, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you or your companies? Just simply go to EZHOA.com, or what's the easiest way?
Yeah, look up EZHOA.com. We have a chat bot on there. Ask for Luke. It'll get right to me. We're a small company. If I could leave with one more thing, Brent, is to say that kind of another branch here too is working in the space of helping men find their hearts and being a part of men retreats and things like that. There's one particular called Warrior Heart that I've been a part of. And again, I've been blessed to meet with a lot of incredible men. And one thing that I've learned from that is I would meet these individuals who would be largely successful in the eyes of the world. One in particular had bought and owned 100 dental offices. So as you can imagine, he was well set, but he didn't have a relationship with his family. Oof. And now seeing the look on his eyes, him looking back and being like, I have this wealth of the world. I have this, admiration from, tons of people. And he said, and I would give it all away to have that relationship with our family. So I would say that's, again, just leaving that with my impressions, again, of AI, of it not taking place of that, and never will. And there will be a point where humanity will say, what's the opportunity cost? What did we give up to get there, that we wish that if we could go back, we would take it? The same in the health space, right? People work themselves crazy to get to the successful point, and then don't have their health, and they would give all the money they ever made to go back and just to feel healthy and free again.
Well, we're probably going to have to talk offline about after the podcast about the whole men-focused kind of leadership. I actually, I don't know if I haven't shared, not to toot my own horn, but I'm an author. I wrote a book called Legacy in Motion. It really talks about the power of men being disciplined and having faith and revelation, and understanding that fatherhood and family is the highest calling, and that the business. I mean, I do all that I do, including this podcast, to drive to my family this idea that, hey, when it comes time to spend time with you guys, I can, because I'm allocating my time. And talking about health and discipline too, it's like we could probably have another whole segment on it. But I mean, if you're listening to Capital Code right now, I mean, you're getting a fresh revelation on both the purpose of AI. If you've kind of taken anything, not to summarize this, you can summarize it for yourself if you've watched it. But if there's no purpose behind AI, it can be human defeating or combat with humanism. And the idea of being for human beings and human relationships is a great opportunity right now for AI to integrate into that space, to liberate your time so you can spend more time with your friends and family, and hopefully leverage technology to make, more revenue if that helps you spend more time with your family, which for most guys and people it does. And so, Luke, thanks again. I mean, I really appreciate your time for being on this, for being on Capital Code, and really sharing your insights. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you again. I'm very honored to be a part of this, and feel very appreciative for you reaching out to me and giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thanks, Luke. Hey, if you've been listening here to Capital Code, we're powered by Orimo, helping businesses show up at the perfect moment intelligently and with purpose. I'm Brent Engelman. I'm your host. And until next time, we'll see you then. Please like, follow, and share, and look forward to seeing you guys again.